This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Leafwell. Hello, listeners of Cannabinoid Connect. Have you ever thought about getting a medical cannabis card? The process can be intimidating and difficult to navigate, to say the least. That's why I've partnered with Leafwell, the easiest and most affordable way to get a medical card in Texas and in 32 other states in the US. Leafwell seamlessly connects you to a network of doctors that will help you get certified online in minutes. Leafwell is run by data scientists, cannabis specialists, and patient advocates that are passionate about increasing access and education around medical cannabis use. Leafwell's patient support team is also there to support you throughout your entire journey using medical cannabis. As I mentioned, I've partnered with Leafwell to provide all my listeners with a discount to become certified for medical cannabis. Simply go to their website at leafwell.com and use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical card. Again, that's leafwell.com. Use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical cannabis card. Leafwell only charges if you get approved. So what do you have to lose? Visit leafwell.com today. Use the promo code CCTX to get certified for medical cannabis, risk-free. Hey, Andy, what's going on?
Hi, not much. Just finished up my work day. Excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to be talking with you as well. I gotta say, Spooky Girl art is really awesome, and I just can't wait to talk about, how you go about your creative process and get inspired by these really psychedelic themed paintings that you do, both traditionally and digitally. So
Yep.
before we get into that, I want to just start with, I guess, of course, your background, but obviously there's this huge boom into like psychedelic art and its relationship with the fine art world, right? And there's these immersive experiences. Um, so tell me a little bit about like your interest and how you got started, and then we can dive more into like some of the different things that we're seeing currently.
Sure. So I've actually been doing Spooky Girl now for about 7 years, which feels simultaneously like a short time and like a really long time in the landscape of how much has changed with not only, like you said, psychedelic art, but digital art as well. I was actually just thinking about that today because I was thinking about how when I started Spooky Girl, I knew that what I was doing was very psychedelic and kind of aligned with a very specific audience, but I was really hesitant to align myself professionally like 100% with that demographic because I was worried that I wouldn't get taken seriously as an artist. And I was kind of laughing to myself about that today because that has changed so much. And now I feel like there's so many more opportunities as an artist and a professional where it's not as hard to be taken as seriously as a psychedelic artist because of things like Meow Wolf and this kind of movement towards psychedelic art. So it's very cool to kind of have been a part of this, like, and see how things have changed over the past 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, well, timing is everything, right? And because the
Yeah.
fact that like psychedelics, psilocybin in particular, ibogaine, and other things are just starting to kind of hit mainstream in the way of like the medicinal use, right? And how it's
Yeah.
therapeutically helping people through these clinical trials and these peer study reviews where it's legitimizing it overall. And it's a good timing because you've been doing this for 7 years and you're like, it's kind of caught up in a way for you, right? You
Hmm.
mentioned Meow Wolf, and that's something that I really want to just touch on really quick because
Sure.
I've been to Meow Wolf in the state where I was born and raised in New Mexico, so in Santa Fe. And it was
Okay.
such a funny and cool experience because my grandmother, my granny, who recently passed away, she had dementia, a sweet woman, amazing. We took her to Meow Wolf, like that was probably 2 or 3 years before she passed. And so can you imagine this older woman with dementia and like I'm like, come on, Granny, let's walk through the fridge, or let's go under this chimney. And
How
she
did
was
she do?
there was so many. It was so, as you could imagine, like with her brain, so what's the word, like so intensified with all these experiences and all these things around her. But she was calm. She lives in a confused world. So I figured, the lights and everything and the whole experience being with people that she was comfortable with, it was a great experience for her. So I just wanted to quickly share that because, Meow Wolf really touches really deeply in that way because of that memory. But
That's
but
so
also
cool.
Burning Man, right, is another one. I've never been to Burning Man. What's that like? I mean, tell us kind of like
I've
what.
never been to Burning Man.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, I see. I just assumed.
No, I've been to Meow
Yeah.
Wolf though. I went to the location in Vegas. I did some work for a psychedelic convention called Meet Delic last year, and it was in Area 15, which is where the Meow Wolf installation in Vegas is, and it was awesome.
Yeah, same kind of thing, right? And I bet they have different themes throughout the different city activations that they have.
Yeah,
So
each one is like a different story.
it's so cool. Yeah.
So cool.
Well, let's get back to you, Andy, and talk about, so like, how do you prioritize. First off, how do you go about your creative process? I mean, that's really interesting in itself. I mean, are you microdosing when you're doing this? Are you like, I mean, are you always doing that? Are you not? Do you get the creative? I mean, tell me all about it, and then we'll get into, the end result and kind of the outcome.
Yeah, so I always describe myself as a very self-indulgent artist. A lot of people ask me how I got into doing psychedelic art, and the truth is I didn't like intend for it to be psychedelic. I always just started drawing things that I wanted to draw. And of course, I think that was helped by, getting in that kind of flow state and just being like, oh, I want to see this color. It's my favorite color. Or I love drawing eyes, which is kind of what started me drawing so many eyes on everything. They kind of developed meaning as I was going along. I'm definitely not microdosing every day. I've, had my bouts with microdosing, but I actually like to think that I kind of already experienced the world in a very psychedelic way. I think it was Aldous Huxley that has some quote about how he thought that artists are really experiencing the world like in a psychedelic way already. Like when he had his experience with LSD, he imagined, because he's a writer, that this was how artists see the world. And so I actually don't use psychedelics that often. And when I do, it's a very intense experience for me because I feel like that experience is kind of amplified. I am just creating kind of how I feel and how I want to, like what I want to see. And it's funny to me that that ends up being so psychedelic, but that's really just how I see the world.
No. It's amazing, and that's what makes art so unique and incredible and beautiful and amazing all in one, right? Is because people kind of approach one particular thing, whether it be a painting or a statue or whatever, they do it in different ways. I can tell you, I did the wine painting with my wife, and her painting compared to mine was terrible, right? It was just like different. But it's what you're doing is really incredible, and the fact that you're not like, you're getting this inspiration naturally is pretty cool. And when you mentioned your experience being like really intense for psychedelics, there's a lot that carries with you, I would imagine too, right? That inspires you for your art. Like, you don't need to always be doing it. Those intense experiences, do you find that happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of, in my attempt to figure out why that is, I think I just have a very visual mind. I also have been so fortunate to be able to be a full-time artist for the last, 3 years, if not longer. And so really, I like to joke that I live in a fantasy world. And so I always talk to my friends who have like, more normal jobs, and they'll be like, oh, how do you stay inspired? I'm like, oh, just come over to my house. I've got, all the walls are painted weird things. I've got art all over the place. Like, I definitely have curated this environment where I feel like I'm inspired all the time, and it's kind of a reflection of like the inside of my own head. So I do feel like I'm living within kind of that experience all the time, which is what I want, and that's what I enjoy. So I'm sure when I do have these psychedelic experiences, yes, it absolutely does inspire my artwork. I like to call it like a level up moment. It helps me problem solve creatively. I've talked about this before. It definitely helps me approach the artistic process differently. But in terms of like visuals and stuff, it's all kind of like all connected.
Well, that's so cool. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I mean, speaking of the art that's just around, for those that are just listening to this episode, they can't see the video, but that's a painting in the back of this really, like, is that an alien that has a tongue out with the three eyes, the third eye on top? Yeah, like, so cool.
Yeah.
Like, so is that like, tell me about that one a little bit. Like, what? What did you see
This is
there?
actually a giant piece of foam, and this was when I started getting really jealous of all the mural painters because I've never painted a giant mural before, and I wanted to like see if I could do something large scale. Of course, I eventually want to be doing mural work. I mean, it's not really the focus of my career right now. So I kind of simultaneously wanted to paint something that was big that I could use in my portfolio for potential clients if they were interested in something like that from me, but also to challenge myself and see if I could. So that's kind of what this is. It's now just kind of lives around my house in various different corners, and like I can't really get rid of it. I don't really know what to do, but it's just kind of a big half mural that I made.
Well, it's very cool. And speaking of, talking about your art, I'm going to pull up here again for those that are just listening. Apologies, but I want everyone to see like the website, and you can talk us through maybe the creative, thought process and like the meaning behind some of these themed art pieces, within your shop. So tell us a little bit about Deep Dive,
Oh, diving deep. So
or
that's
Diving
probably
Deep,
my
sorry.
most Yeah, that's probably my most famous illustration. It went totally viral on the internet about 3 years ago, and probably is the reason why I've experienced so much success on at least a few of my social media pages. So those collections that you see on the front page, including Diving Deep, are collections that I've made of merchandise based off my most popular designs. I really like that this one seems to resonate with a lot of people because like I said, I describe myself as a self-indulgent artist, and I drew this for myself. I draw almost all my illustrations for Spooky Girl to be representative of something that I'm experiencing or what I'm going through at the time. So it feels great to me when people, take a look at these few most popular designs, which are some of my all-time favorites, and they feel like they really connect with them. So
I
yeah, the ones that you see on the front page are my most popular designs.
I have sister-in-laws that would love this kindred spirit, the tapestry especially. So I'm gonna have to
I love that one.
yeah, it's really cool. They have cats, so that's why I say. But this is just all so cool. I mean, so this is like when we go back to the homepage, this is your collection currently, right? Of like most recent kind of work with the different
Actually, if you
accessories
go
and
to the
things.
top of my site, there's a
Uh-huh.
little bar that says what's new. And that's going to be all of my most recent stuff that I just put up on the site. So in the beginning, like in the front page, that's my most popular collection. So those kind of live there permanently. But my new in shop section is where I have like all the stuff I'm posting about, my newest illustrations, any of the like, I actually have some Lisa Frank stuff up there from
I
my
was gonna
personal
say
collection. Yeah.
gave me a flashback from my sisters growing up. They had Lisa Frank everything.
Yeah, so that's where I have kind of my most recent stuff that I'm working on. It might not be as popular, but if I'm posting a lot about something, I want to make it easy for people to find.
Yeah, no, of course, of course. This is cool too. This universe inside. I like that poster.
Thank
Well,
you.
you're obviously very, very talented. And yeah, so I'm glad that at least we were able to show the people that are watching, the skill that you have. And what comes with it, I would imagine, like any industry, is community and how important that is, right? And so what is the psychedelic art community like, and is it big, is it smaller, is it, I mean, growing? How would you describe it?
I don't even know if I'm really part of the psychedelic art community. I wish I was. I am in some ways, but I think my community kind of exists. It's very true to the Spooky Girl brand. I kind of created Spooky Girl out of this personal feeling of feeling like I was a part of a lot of things, but not really a part of anything, kind of this perpetual otherness, I like to call it. And I've been so lucky to obviously find so many other people that resonate with, who like feel kind of like the weirdo, the spooky one. So I feel like I'm half in the psychedelic art community, half in, the queer art community, half in the illustration community, half in the fine art community as well. So the truth is, I really haven't had a ton of opportunities to work with other like quote psychedelic artists, especially where I am right now in Hawaii. There's really not as much of a culture of that here. So I kind of just observe from the outside. I think the closest that I got to it was with Meet Delic. I got to go and again experience Area 15, which was like so validating for me. It was one of the first experiences I had where there was like a blacklight art gallery and there was like, Meow Wolf. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, people are taking this seriously. There are other people like me out there. So I definitely have noticed that landscape changing, but I still kind of feel like I'm on the outside of it in some ways.
No, I get it. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, being in Hawaii, I would imagine you might be the only one. I mean, not the only one, but like I'm sure it's not
Maybe.
very, it's not very common as opposed to other types of art that would come or be
It's
available.
definitely not.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. I mean, you're in again, timing's everything. You're in a good place and you do good work. So tell us about your approach to the digital illustration side as opposed to the traditional painting side and how those two styles can influence one another.
Well, I do feel like all the art that I create is very consistent. It's one of my gifts that I've always known exactly what I like to do and have kind of been able to do it from the beginning. I think a lot of people don't know this about me because, I'm now almost 30 and I started Spooky Girl art when I was like 21. And so a lot of people, and when I was starting that, Procreate didn't exist. The iPad as we know it didn't really exist. And so the way that I was doing digital art as like a broke college student was like no one had ever heard of it. Like at the time, it was this super big deal for me to even be, I would rent out this because I couldn't afford it. So at the library where I went to university, I would rent out, they would allow you to check out like a digital tablet that had a screen. And the fact that it had a screen was this huge deal. It weighed 1,000 pounds. And I had to wait like 2 months to get, I'd have to put my name in. And at the time I have an English degree, but I was getting my fine art minor. So I was studying drawing and painting. And no one I was going to art school with was doing anything like this. Obviously digital art existed, but it was not really accessible, especially with like Photoshop costing as much as it did at the time. And that's
Right.
where I was illustrating a lot. So at the time when I started this, it doesn't seem that long ago, what I was doing was very unique. Now it's kind of funny because people will be like, oh, I've seen this a million times. And I'm like, yeah, and I probably was the one that inspired that 6 years ago, with my own art. So it's so funny because I kind of turned to digital from a marketing perspective because, as a poor college kid, I was looking for work and I needed to figure out a way to create art and create prints and do something that was easy to market. And I had that kind of added benefit of everyone not knowing what digital art was. And now cut to, where we are in the age of TikTok and Procreate. Now I'm kind of moving back towards doing painting because there's so many people who can do digital art that that not as many people are good at painting and drawing. So
Right.
I've seen it come like full circle where I started doing this where nobody else was doing it. And now I'm kind of like starting to pull back and do more traditional work. And it's just so funny to see that. I do more of traditional work and showcase more of my drawing and painting skills on TikTok, just because it's a better platform I found for sharing that type of video. But yeah, it's just really interesting.
That's so funny. And you say full circle, but it's in the 7-year time span. And that just kind of shows how fast like technology evolves and moves and like how people catch on, right? Like once like you said,
Yeah.
the software, the tools are more accessible. That's so funny though. And it seems like that's happening even like with music. More people are using like vinyl records or like CDs. They
Yeah, and all of a
want
sudden
that.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's vintage.
Yeah, it's vintage, right?
Funny.
And it's so crazy. So even the styles too. I don't know, like even men's, if you look at like men's formal dressing, like the skinny ties and the tight suits, like that's all like 1950s kind of stuff. So very
Yeah.
interesting how we go
Yeah.
back to our roots in some ways. Um, have you seen the virtual reality art? There's some girl on
Like AI
Instagram.
art or like art in the metaverse or like there's kind of lots of
No, so I want to talk about all those, but I'm specifically talking about like so the goggles, like yeah, like the metaverse, but so like
the 3D, like the 3D.
yeah, the 3D. So they got the wand and they're just like
Yeah.
painting. This woman, I forget her name. I
Wow.
wish I could give her a shout out, but she has this huge following on Instagram because she's doing that. Have you ever tried that, or what is that all about?
Oh, I've never tried it. I do know a little bit about it. I've always wanted to try it. It's just a different, I mean, like you said, we're entering into this world now where, especially with kind of AI art making a huge appearance even in the last few months, like the landscape is changing in so many ways, and it's so interesting to see all these different art forms come up. And I really just think, like, I think there's this attitude, especially in the art community, that it's all very competitive with each other, which I think is misplaced, because I think it's just a different, it's just different, it's just a different type of art. Like what I'm
Right.
doing when I'm sitting down to paint or sitting down to even draw and procreate is not the same as what the girl you're describing. Just technically what she's doing to create her art in a different space, it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, you can't judge what is art and what's not when somebody's producing something that is artistic and has a unique value that people, you know, what's the word, like that they want. They, they'll pay for it. There's a value to
Yeah,
it. I mean,
it's
that's
just
art.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You talk about AI art. So how do you feel about robots painting? And are they good? What do they paint?
They good. Well, so AI art is very interesting. So most AI artists, I'm gonna have a hard time with this one.
Say it five
That
times.
that you see on Instagram, um, what they do is they will, get a program that produces an artificial intelligent program that will like produce some sort of art, or like it's like a generator essentially, right? And they will try around entering certain keywords or certain phrases into this generator, and then they will go through all the images that it produces to pull out the best ones that they feel like are the most artistic. Again, a very different form of art, but I really do believe that it is a form of art. It's been really controversial in the obviously in the professional artist community, especially among us who have been doing this for the past almost a decade and are like, where it's going to go. But I don't really feel personally threatened by it. I think that there's too much competitive spirit within the art community already. I actually have been finding a lot of really fun inspiration from AI artists. And for me, I can tell if it's AI art immediately, especially as an artist. And to me, that's not like, it doesn't make it any less credible. It's just very different. Like I
Right.
can look at something and I can see when it's been generated by a computer and a very beautiful image of something very cool. Obviously, the person who developed it spent a lot of time picking it, spent a lot of time, entering in all this stuff to create it. It's a different type of thing. It's different than what I'm doing. It is, it's almost like writing, or, it's just a different form of creation. And I actually think it's,
Right.
again, it's a little controversial, but I actually think it's really cool.
I think it's cool. And I mean, here's the thing, right? Like what it boils down to is there is human intervention with AI technology because
Mhm.
like you have to train these machines to function in the way in which they automate and how they process. They're not built, they don't build themselves to then know. Like that's why we have the Google or the Echo, right? In the houses where you're just basically what you're doing is training that Echo Dot to like know what you want to do. So it'll probably recommend at some point,
Right.
hey, do you want me to read the weather to you? Do you, because you ask for it every morning, right? So it registers that. And the same with art. I mean, humans in some way are influencing it. And what I think is fascinating is the controversy at the government level is the patenting of this stuff
Mhm.
because who owns the art? Is it the owner? Is it the AI? Is it, and so I think there was a case that I read in NextGov. It's a publication, but anyway, it's just fascinating what's happening. Is there any other trends that we're
It
missing? We
really
talked
is.
about the metaverse, we talked about AI. What is there anything else that you're seeing that's really cool and interesting?
Um, I think we're just gonna see, I mean, nothing that I can think of, but I think like we're just gonna see a lot of change over the next couple years. Like it's gonna be hard to predict what the evolution of AI art really is going to look like, because it is just in the beginning stages. And I think that, like the NFT movement was born out of this kind of oversaturation of digital art and creators on the internet, and this kind of attempt to put the power back in the hands of those creators. And I think it's been interesting to kind of observe that over the past year and see what has happened. And I just don't think, I think we're at the very beginning of this story with technology and art, especially again, as somebody who has kind of started so many years ago with the clunky, tablet and has kind of seen this evolution of, the way that even my style of art, is taking up space on the internet. So it's very interesting to me. I like to sometimes I get insecure about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, and the landscape really has changed even for me in the past year. I'm seeing a lot of things that are very different, and I do social media and marketing, consulting and everything. And it's been tough. It's been a tough year as legislation has changed with social media, as the structure of social media has been changing. And, with this kind of oversaturation, the introduction of AI art and NFTs. But I think that we're at the beginning of the story, and I kind of take pride in that. I'm doing what I do, and I'm bringing my vision to the world, and nobody else can do that. That's my power, and I think that's every artist's power. I think every artist is bringing their own unique vision to the world. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out in the digital landscape over the next few years.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I couldn't have said that better myself. You mentioned social media, so I'm in the same world as well. So talk about what are the services you offer, packages and so on, and how long you've been doing it. Yeah, it's a crazy game. And also I want to get into everything that's changing and evolving within the space, because there's a lot going on there.
There is a lot, almost too much to even talk about, because by the time this comes out, it'll have changed again. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I've actually just gotten into kind of consulting over the past year, and it's pretty basic, just kind of out of meeting enough people who are curious about it and realizing that maybe I'm neurotic and obsessive enough with keeping up with the trends that I kind of do know a little bit more than most people, maybe to my own detriment. But I just offer, my intention is specifically creatives. I think that there is a huge lack in teaching young creatives how to monetize their art and how to think about their art in a way that's kind of business oriented. When I went to art school, I really felt like, and I was almost laughed at for pursuing digital art, but again, at the time I needed a way to kind of be able to take my art with me to create a product. And that was kind of born out of this, no, I need to make money. There's not a waiting period where I can paint this picture, send it off to a gallery on my own dime and wait for it to sell. There needs to be a way that I can, make this into my job, because that's what I'm passionate about. So with what I do to help people with social media, I try to focus on people who are trying to start their creative businesses or grow their creative businesses, strategies for keeping up with kind of the changing times, especially with TikTok and Reels and all that has kind of taken a lot of people my age, because I'm kind of on the tail end of millennials. They're struggling a little bit. So I tend to help a lot of people in their 30s, some of my older friends, get a handle on that type of stuff and, strategies to make things a little bit more marketable as a creative.
Yeah. I mean, that's me. I mean, I know all the primary channels, but TikTok, I never got on. I never entered that world. So I see the reels, because I'm sure they circulate them through Instagram, of course, but not on the platform. And I don't even know if it's going to be around. They might ban it. Have you heard that it's in talks? I mean, it's wild.
It's been in talks. I mean, there's been rumors about it being banned for the last few years. So we'll see.
Yeah. We shall see. Very interesting. And then we got the Twitter fiasco going on. And I heard recently, of course, there was layoffs, but then I heard that he's bringing people back now. So I don't know. It's interesting. How do you feel about the blue check mark and the $8 a month?
So
first off, did you know the process of how they validated before?
Yes, because I've been trying to get validated for the last ever.
Right. Same. Yeah.
And as you know, I'm sure the process of getting validated for me, and just for people who have public platforms, really more of a security measure. I've had so many people steal my work, so many people try and impersonate me, so many people, the list goes on and again, I've been one of kind of the founders, in my opinion, of my genre on Instagram in kind of the digital art space, that to me, getting validated sees on Instagram and on Twitter and everything would help, I think, mitigate some of that, the copying and that, kind of,
right.
I don't really feel safe in the space in that way, because there's so many people who are trying to copy me. So my frustration with the paying the $8, although I completely understand the intention of it, I don't know if I necessarily agree. I understand the motivation. For creators and people with public platforms, the blue check mark really is more of a security measure, in my opinion. So to make that accessible for anybody, like the other day, I searched my username on Twitter is SpookyGirl, and I searched Andi Astra, and there was an account. And there wasn't anything on it, but I was like, somebody obviously like that name is very unique. And I was like, this is exactly what
I
I'm
bet
talking
it's not a
about. Like
person. I bet it's a bot farm that literally seeks these people out and just
maybe
replicates these accounts. Yeah, I mean, they're saying up to 80% of users may be bots within Twitter, which is why the deal was delayed, because I think he was under the impression that it was like 30%, but then he heard that and he was like, whoa. So yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying with the blue check mark. My beef with the verification process initially was like there's a group of like 8 or 10 Twitter employees that sit in a room and just decide, they just approve, yes, that person. And there's no like clear-cut criteria as to like how you're verified. So I thought
there's
that was
not.
bullshit. But the $8 a month, I mean, it gives everyone a fair shot. I don't know exactly what you get for it. I see the security, your point on the security measure. I agree with it. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's a whole like social media is being flipped on its head right now, and really, and then Facebook's just over there sucking still. I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about Facebook? I'm not a fan at all in terms of like promoting for a business or like I don't know, getting your name. I guess you're a public figure in a way, so that helps, right? You're known. But tell me, what's your Facebook experience?
So it's actually pretty interesting. I didn't realize that, I had made a Facebook page for my art when I made an Instagram for my art a million years ago. That was what you did. And I actually didn't realize that I had gone viral on Facebook until I checked it because, it was Facebook. I didn't check it. And
Right.
then one time a couple years ago, I checked it. And all of a sudden, I remember looking at I had 40,000 followers on my Facebook page. And
Whoa.
and since then, that is now almost 80,000 followers. And
So it's a good channel for you. Yeah, that works.
so
Yeah.
while I do agree with you that Facebook is definitely not my preferred form of, representing myself, I found, after I kind of had discovered that there was a lot of attention on my page, that a lot of the demographic on Facebook is a little bit different. It's more people who are more willing to buy stuff, I found. There's a lot of people who sit on Facebook kind of in the same kind of vein of like online shopping, and the demographic, the age group, I think that it appeals to does tend to buy a lot of things. So
Right.
I've found that that's pretty nice. But all that being said, in the last 6 months, with a lot of the policy changes to Meta and Facebook and Instagram, and the legislation that's changed regarding privacy and ads, my engagement has totally tanked. It's completely not the same anymore, and has kind of gone back to me being like, all right, great. I have this page with 80,000 followers.
Now
What do I do?
you could just use it for like exclusive drops or something, like not like fully manage it, but that's the same that I'm seeing too. My engagement on that, like really with any page that I have, I don't have near as many followers as you, but I'm saying like, the follower to like engagement ratio should be like, and it's always so bad on Facebook. They just don't serve up the
Especially
content.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about LinkedIn? Are you messing with LinkedIn at all?
No, I'm not. And I just read recently that maybe I should be. I'm almost embarrassed to look at my LinkedIn profile because it's been so long. I can only imagine what 22-year-old me was doing on there. I was tipped off recently that that's a good spot to look for jobs as an artist. So it's on my radar. I got to check into that again.
Yeah. Well, heads up, I'm gonna tag you in your LinkedIn profile when I publish this
Oh God,
episode.
I gotta
So
look at it. Okay.
no, you're good. Well, hey, what haven't we talked about? What's on your mind? Are we missing anything? I want to make sure that we're covering everything that you're passionate about and what you're interested in.
Well, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is building community and especially building community within the queer space and the LGBTQ space, especially here in Hawaii. Like I said, I sometimes feel like a crazy person. I'm the only one doing this type of artwork, but I know that that's not true. I know that there is a community of us, out there. And so something I've been working on for the past year has been an artist collective called The Outer Rim. Right now, it's based in my house and studio space and, has a few other artists, mostly friends of mine in it. But the goal is to kind of uplift each other. And my intention and my biggest passion as an artist and a creative is to turn around and, like I said, share my knowledge with other young creatives who are maybe struggling in the same ways that I struggled. I didn't feel like I had a lot of resources when I was getting started, and I felt really alone for a really long time. And now I'm lucky enough to be kind of building a community where I don't feel that way anymore. So that's kind of a big part of my mission as part of Spooky Girl, the brand, but also as an individual, is to be intentional about creating that community where other artists are coming together, not just to create, but to be strategic about business. I think that's something that's a little bit of a struggle for creatives because, our brains kind of work in one way and it's hard for our brains to work in the other way. So that's something that I tend to be pretty good at and I found a lot of success with, obviously, over the past few years. So something that's I'm really passionate about is sharing that and kind of creating that community space. So I hope in the next few years that will grow and kind of become more intentional, but that's also something I'm really passionate about.
That's beautiful, Andi. That's awesome. And I knew that there was community in there somewhere. I mean, I asked it earlier and you're like, well, but I asked the wrong questions. So I see what you're doing and you're really giving back to the queer and LGBTQ community by, like you said, like cultivating and mentoring in this particular space, especially because it can be hard, especially as a young person, probably to deal with that, right? Where
Yeah.
if you haven't come out, or if you're just kind of living with that.
Yeah, or if your art is really weird and nobody gets it, because I can definitely relate to that.
Well, who cares what people think? I mean, there's always a group that's gonna like it. So like, and I definitely like it, and I'm not part of that world. So keep doing what you're doing. But I've
Thank
had
you.
so much fun talking with you today. I really appreciate your time. And we definitely need to have you back on in the near future to just kind of talk about maybe the evolution of your art and kind of what you're focused on. But
Yeah.
for now, where can people find your website, social media, if they want to learn more and follow Andi Astra?
So my website is shopspookygirl.com. I also have an Instagram under that name, but in general, you can find me as Spooky Girl Art on almost any platform. I also do have a personal TikTok account and a personal Instagram account where I share a little bit more of my life and I talk a little bit more about my paintings and share a little bit more of like the traditional art side. So if you're interested in that type of stuff and getting to know more about me, you can find me under Andi Astra on almost anything. But in general, Spooky Girl Art across all platforms is where you're going to see my products, where you're going to see my art and follow along with what I'm doing.
Amazing. You heard it from Andi firsthand. Check out her website. Check out her stuff. It's cool. Thank you so much, Andi. Really appreciate your time. It was fun.
Thank you.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.